Captain America and Bucky, Captain America and the Falcon, Daredevil and the Black Widow, Power Man and Iron Fist, Cloak and Dagger, Captain Britain and the Black Knight. Captain Britain's self-titled debut had not even lasted 9 months before it was cancelled due to low sales, and his remaining stories, published in Super Spider-Man, had failed to sustain the comic-buying public's interest in him. As 1977 drew to a close, the character that had debuted just over a year before was abandoned. There was no doubt that Marvel's experiment of launching a British-focused hero in a British anthology comic had failed. Maybe they thought they would be the first of many, that Marvel UK would become less reliant on reprints and produce a whole range of UK-only titles that would become as culturally important in that country as the likes of the X-Men and Spider-Man were in the US. However, despite there being a small and devoted fan base of superhero comics in the UK, the British comic tradition was just too different from that of America, and an American-style superhero just didn't fit in, even if he did refer to people as chum. It was in 1972 that Marvel set up Marvel UK to publish, or I suppose republish, their material for the British market. Until then, they'd licensed out their content to companies such as Oddham's Press, who reprinted the likes of Iron Man and the Fantastic Four in anthology titles such as Fantastic and Terrific. The model was set in those early days, and so it continued. The comics didn't set the world on fire, but they sold. After the failure of the Captain Britain strip, it looked as though reprints were once again the future. In 1978, in the face of falling sales, Marvel appointed a new editor-in-chief of their British operation, Des Skin. It was an appointment that would significantly change their output. Des, a former editor of several British comics and magazines, commissioned original material by writers and artists that had grown up in the British tradition. He was in the role for less than 18 months, but during that time, his revamp of the line resulted in the launch of Doctor Who Weekly, a title which, in one form or another, continues to the present day, and, in March of 1979, Hulk Comic. Hulk Comic contained more original material than any of its predecessors. There was the lead Hulk strip, exclusive to the UK, drawn by a variety of artists, including a pre-Watchmen Dave Gibbons, and based on the Hulk that we saw on the TV show, rather than the character comic fans were more familiar with. Nick Fury was present in an adventure drawn by a 17-year-old Steve Dillon, long before he made his name working alongside Garth Ennis on The Punisher and Preacher. David Lloyd's Night Raven was there too, alongside a Black Knight comic strip written by Steve Parkhouse and drawn by John Stokes. Yeah, we have a bit of a problem here. You see, Hulk comic isn't that easy to come by. Even in the UK, second-hand comic book shops rarely stock old UK comics, and if they do, it tends to be 2000 AD. eBay isn't bad, but still there just aren't many copies of this series around. Therefore, I have nothing to reveal, just yet. We have most of the issues that we need, just not all of them, and not issue 1. My counterpart will be filling in the gaps using a collected edition. Yeah, I know, it's embarrassing. Writer Steve Parkhouse and artist John Stokes both worked predominantly in the British field, working on the usual stable of titles such as Doctor Who, the UK's Star Wars comic, and that stalwart of the long boxes, 2000 AD. Paul Neary provided inks and layouts for some of these issues, and he is probably the best known of our 3 creators, having transitioned across the pond and provided work for some mainstream Marvel titles, such as the inks for Excalibur. Calm down. It's coming. Okay, let's get on with it. In Cornwall, in the southwest of England, a helicopter pilot is distracted by a UFO. But it isn't any old UFO, it's the Black Knight on his steed, Valinor. Nonetheless, this sudden appearance causes the pilot to lose control of the helicopter. It clips some trees and crashes. Luckily, the pilot survived because he was thrown free of the helicopter before impact. And laying there, dazed, he looks up and there is the Black Knight. And the Black Knight says, "Your craft is damaged, I fear. Of what nature is your quest?" Okay, not sure why you're talking like that, but okay. It turns out the pilot was actually taking some blood of a rare type to the local emergency hospital. So the Black Knight says, "Fear not, I'll make sure that it gets there," because of course the helicopter is now out of action. Well, it's very good of the Black Knight, but I don't know, an apology would have been nice. Whilst he's doing that, we meet a woman called Old Sarah. Now this woman is out gathering wood when she sees someone that she refers to as the stranger. And she tells us that the stranger is always there, looking out to sea, with eyes so empty and sad. We're told that whilst Old Sarah ponders the stranger, she watches the strange craft that has landed nearby. By the way, if you're wondering who she's talking to, it's her cat, or should I say, her familiar. The pilot is reporting his encounter with a UFO. This then prompts the RAF to scramble a Harrier jump jet to bring the UFO down. Now that transmission was overheard by someone who is described only as a minion, and he recognises the description as that of the Black Knight and his horse. He then trots off to tell his master, and his master is Mordred. Now this isn't Mordred the Mystic, although Des Skin would go on to claim that he was impersonating Mordred the Mystic. This is Mordred the evil, sometimes enemy of the Avengers, and actually one of the Black Knight's old enemies from his series back in the 1950s. He has been searching for the Black Knight, and now he has found him. And from his castle, he lets loose some hell ravens to go and attack the knight. So hold on, the Black Knight is one thing, but this Mordred character, the castle, the strange craft as it's described, if you're wondering what time period this is set in, you're not alone. The answer comes all too quickly for the Black Knight, as the Harrier, presumably seeing that it is a man on a flying horse, which is admittedly an unusual sight, nonetheless decides to take him out of the sky by firing missiles at him. Mind you, they appear to have been blanks, because the Black Knight and Valinor both land on the ground safely. The RAF then loses some more expensive hardware, as the Harrier jet is attacked by the Hellravens. The pilot quickly ejects, and then it is down to the Black Knight to fight off the avian beasts. The pilot lands in the sea, and is afraid that he's going to drown when he is hauled to safety by the stranger. Once the Black Knight has dispatched the Hellravens, he looks for shelter and finds it in a cave. Again, what century is this setting? The cave, however, already has an occupant, and he doesn't like sharing it. The occupant, of course, is none other than the stranger, and he leaps to attack the Black Knight. Now, whilst the stranger is trying to strangle the Black Knight recognises the amulet that's hanging from the stranger's neck, and he thinks, can he be the one I seek? As is often the case in these situations, the stranger doesn't want to speak. Instead, he just wants to fight. He with a staff, and the Black Knight, of course, with his ebony blade. It's during this fight that the Black Knight notices the same runes are on his sword as are on this stranger's staff. And he says, we must both be brothers in spirit. We must both be servants of Merlin. The mention of Merlin's name triggers something within the stranger. It has a vision of standing stones. But I hasten to add that these aren't the standing stones of Darkmoor. These are completely different, mysterious standing stones. With a lull in the fighting due to the stranger's confusion, the Black Knight takes this opportunity to explain why he is there and who he thinks the stranger is. It seems that Merlin has sent him on a mission to find a hero, and he will know that hero by the way he dresses, by the fact that he carries a staff, and by an amulet that he wears around his neck. This then gives us a very brief flashback to the captain's time as a hero, and oh no, it's the highwayman, isn't it? And the Black Knight says, who are you? Are you the hero that I've been sent to find? But unfortunately, the stranger has amnesia. He has no idea who he is or why he's there. Could it be that the stranger is Captain Britain? He certainly could be. But what about the Black Knight? He is one of several Marvel characters that actually predate the Marvel Universe, making his debut in issue 1 of his own comic in 1955. That short-lived series was published by Marvel precursor Atlas Comics, And at that point in time, the Black Knight was the alter ego of Sir Percy of Scandia, not Dane Whitman. The Dane Whitman version of the character is probably best known as a member of the Avengers, and this Black Knight is the Dane Whitman version. So why does he seem so un-Dane-like? Some people have suggested he speaks in an old-fashioned way because he has just returned from the 12th century, a time-travelling location he had chosen to stay in issue 11 of The Defenders. But there is nothing else in this story to tie into that, and I think they just wanted to use the character because of his Arthurian links, and didn't really care about continuity. In fact, in later years, Steve Parkhouse admitted he had no interest in the already established character. I would suggest that this was an alternate version of the Black Knight. But then how do we explain why he was kidnapped by the Grand Master during the Contest of Champions series? Continuity is such a pain.
Tell me about it.
So this is definitely the Black Knight. But what about the stranger? Is he the good captain?
Whilst our heroes get to know each other, Mordred, or is it Mordred, has raised a giant known as the Ancient One, and he sends him to kill the Black Knight. The battle with the Ancient One takes place in issue 5 of Hulk comic, and it's during the battle with this creature that the stranger takes off his coat to reveal the Captain Britain costume. He joins the fight using his staff to temporarily down the Ancient One, and the Black Knight seems convinced that he is Captain Britain, but he says he doesn't understand, and neither does Captain Britain. The two then basically work together to lure their opponent onto what is essentially quicksand. And, oh my god, disturbing death, made all the more disturbing by the fact that the creature is silent. Mordred then quickly appears just to make sure that the Black Knight knows that he is behind the attack, and he just as quickly vanishes again. The two are now comrades, and in issue 6 Brian takes them to get help from the only person he can think that can help them, and that is old Sarah. We're never told exactly how Brian knows old Sarah, unless it's from his wanderings along the cliff, I suppose. But he says to her, can she doctor an injured horse, a very special animal? And old Sarah says, special? Pah! Old Sarah's seen them all. Where's this horse? It's the one over there with the giant bat wings. Oh yeah, there's a bit weird, isn't it? The Black Knight tries to get some more answers out of Brian, but Brian says it's as if his mind has been blocked by some obstacle, and he can't remember anything. So no answers for any of us just yet. Before our heroes have caught their breath, they're under attack again, as an entity known as the Walker bursts through old Sarah's front door. The Black Knight is willing to fight him, but Captain Britain goes a bit sideways and flees from the house in a panic. The battle continues in the next issue, and it feels like I've said this before. Issue 7 this time, and yes, believe it or not, that is the front cover, not the back cover. Weird, huh? The battle doesn't last long, however, because the Walker quickly kind of breaks down, depressed, because he says he was sent by Merlin to find two heroes, that he's found a black armoured braggart and a snivelling coward. That coward, by the way, isn't getting very far, because he's had a spell cast on him so that he will continue to run round in a circle. So no matter how far he runs, he will always end up back at old Sarah's cottage. Now look, there are some issues with the storytelling, a lot of issues with it. However, credit where it's due, some of the artwork in this is absolutely outstanding. Look at the shadows in the previous issue on old Sarah's face. And now in this one, not just that sequence of Brian Braddock running through the woods, but look at that. We don't need that speech bubble telling us how he feels at that point. It's fantastic. Brian does eventually come to his senses back in old Sarah's house, and the Walker confirms that his mission is that he's been sent by Merlin to find two heroes and to take them to Otherworld. And this issue ends with us seeing a load of trolls emerging from the ground, ready to attack our heroes. The big fight happens in issue 8, where we actually see some really good battle scenes. While I think about it, can I just say that for those people out there who have never been to Cornwall, it's not like this. It's not stuck in some kind of time warp, out of touch with the modern world. Well, actually, I say that, For the next couple of issues, our heroes go their separate ways, as the Black Knight battles trolls and demons, and the Walker takes Brian Braddock on foot to find Otherworld. Their journey at one point going through a modern town, just to remind us that they aren't already in Otherworld. They eventually reunite, and we have more battles with ogres and goblins, and even elves join in the fray, on the side of the good, obviously. This is all so weird. I mean, why have, in this rambling kind of fantasy epic, why have two Marvel superheroes as the main characters? The Black Knight doesn't look too out of place because of his costume, but we still know that he is the Black Knight, a member of the Avengers. So why not just replace him with a traditional knight? And why, oh why, do we have Captain Britain? It's just so bizarre. It could have just been a story set in some fantasy world. It doesn't have to have any superheroes in it at all. It would have been perfectly fine. Instead, we've got this weird mashup between Tolkien and Stan Lee. Now there's something I never thought I'd see. In issue 16, after the latest battle with goblins, our heroes split up once more. The Black Knight is going to cover their retreat from the battle. The Walker is going to depart to try to find a new staff of power. And Captain Britain is going to head for Otherworld. And the Walker tells him that beneath the darkness in his mind is a secret of tantamount importance to Merlin. A secret that only he can reveal. Then the captain, in the company of a couple of elves, leaps onto a boat and sails off in search of Otherworld. For the next few issues, we follow the Black Knight's exploits, but Captain Britain is nowhere to be seen.
Okay. So far, so repetitive. Our heroes, having met the Walker who will guide them to Otherworld, stumble from one battle with mythological beings to another without any real storytelling progress being made. Clearly, we are still in the realms of black and white comics, but what you probably haven't picked up on is the length of each instalment. Cap's adventures in his own title and Super Spider-Man were typically 7 pages long. But here, in the very thin Hulk comic, each chapter lasted just 3 pages, sometimes only 2. The benefit of this was that you could have more features in each issue, with 6 or more tales running side by side. The downside, especially when reading one chapter after another, is that it can become very repetitive. As for Captain Britain himself, he had been on hiatus for over a year when this story began, and if it wasn't for the costume, you wouldn't know it was him. I know that he hadn't had the most rounded of characters, but even so, he isn't behaving much like the Lion of London. Oh well. He returns to the strip in issue 20, where we see him continue his journey to Otherworld.
Captain Britain, in the boat with the elves, has found an island. That island isn't Otherworld, but the entrance to Otherworld is hidden there on that island. Incidentally, this chapter of the tale in issue 20 of Hulk comic is the first time that Cap has headlined a strip since the days of Super Spider-Man. Normally these chapters feature the Black Knight's name, which is fair enough. It's the Black Knight's story overall. But this chapter focuses purely on Cap, and that isn't necessarily a good thing for him. Because not long after they land on the island, they are met by some wraiths who say they have seen Captain Britain's destiny and death hangs over his head. They warn him to turn back, and Cap is happy to follow that advice. But one of the elves says to him, "No, come on, we've got to keep pushing on. We've come too far to give up now." Well, it's easy for him to say. Actually, it's a good job he did push Captain Britain onwards, because soon after this, they find the gates to Otherworld. They may have found the gates, but they appear to be locked, and they can't work out how to open them, which is fair enough. Otherwise, you'd have any old Tom, Dick or Harry from Cornwall going across, finding the island and opening the gates to Otherworld. However, there is something that looks like a keyhole, and it turns out that Cap's staff fits that keyhole perfectly. Okay, I'll buy that. It makes sense. By the way, I have noticed that the old Star Scepter design has been abandoned in favour of something more like the original quarterstaff that Captain Britain used. With the gates open, there comes a strong wind, and with that wind comes the White Rider, also known as Death, and he has come for Captain Britain. That can't be a good thing, can it? The battle with death unfolds in the very next issue, where despite Cap giving a good account of himself in the battle, it is down to the timely arrival of the Black Knight that death is defeated and Captain Britain saved from otherwise certain death. Nah, I'm only kidding. The Black Knight arrived too late and Captain Britain is dead. See? Cap's body isn't even cold when the next member of the Middle-earth parade arrives on the scene. His name is Mandrak, Lord of the Slain. Admittedly, that's a pretty cool name. The White Rider, he says, has claimed Captain Britain's body. Now he has come for his soul. And to take his soul, he needs to take his body. Just go with it. As his lackeys carry the captain's body away, the Black Knight says no, they mustn't be allowed to take it, and he begins to fight. But the numbers are overwhelming, and ultimately it's only due to the arrival of Valinor that the Black Knight is able to jump on his steed, grab Captain Britain's staff, and escape through the entrance to Otherworld. Of course there's more fighting in Otherworld. Who would have thought that fighting could be so tedious? And actually, we're more than 20 issues in now, and we still don't know the purpose of this quest. We know that the Black Knight was searching for a hero. We know that the Walker was searching for 2 heroes, who he then had to send to Otherworld. And he knew about this secret that Captain Britain had. But we still don't really know the purpose of all of this. There are still opportunities for great art though, like here, where Merlin himself first confronts Mandrak. And what do you reckon? Patrick Troughton in Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger? Merlin does succeed in defeating Mandrak, encasing him in the earth. Not killing him, mind, but encasing him in the earth indefinitely. After that, Merlin manages to revive the body of Captain Britain by crossing into the spirit realm and rescuing the captain's astral form before it enters Netherworld, the true realm of the dead. We then have something of a mid-season finale, as after the Black Knight spends 3 issues battling forest trolls, and Merlin defeats Mordred by turning his spell back on him and shattering his mind, Captain Britain finally regains consciousness. And not only does Merlin tell him that his body is on the road to recovery, but his mind also is now clear, because you remember the whole memory loss thing. With his memory restored, a secret that he has been keeping for a long time can now be revealed. But yes, this is indeed a mid-season finale, because that cliffhanger was left unresolved for nearly 3 months. Issues 31 to 36 featured the origin of Captain Britain retold, because you demanded it, apparently. This consisted of a heavily edited reprint of issues 1 and 2 of the original Captain Britain comic, along with a couple of other highlights, such as his encounters with Lord Hawk, Captain America and Hurricane. It also retells the Captain's first visit to Otherworld, when he was given the seemingly forgotten Star Scepter. Actually, that story ties in nicely to this epic, as it features Merlin heavily. Back to the Otherworld epic? No, because apparently we also demanded the Black Knight's origin story, so we got that as well. Finally, after 11 issues of backstory, we return to Otherworld to find out Cap's big secret. Why do I get the feeling it wasn't worth the wait? There is actually more of interest to us, the reader, here than the secret that Merlin is alluding to. Merlin uses hypnosis to regress the Captain back in time. To what point? To the point that he was returning on a plane from America after teaming up with Spider-Man in Marvel Team Up issues 65 and 66. We see that there was a sense of fear on the plane, not helped by unexplained fuel loss and engine failure. After the cabin crew get all the passengers to put their life jackets on and bullshit them that this is routine, Brian feels that there is an evil force reaching out for him. He then seemed to go a bit nutso and jump out of the plane, but in reality he knew exactly what he was doing. He thought that if he leapt out of the plane, the evil force would follow him and the passengers and crew would be left alone. He landed in the Atlantic and was washed up on the Cornish shore, where he had a vision in which he was called by an unknown voice, and he saw those 3 standing stones. Suddenly, my respect for this story has leapt. Great continuity, tying this epic into the broader Marvel universe. And also the whole idea of him having amnesia after he was washed up on the beach is supposed to explain why he wasn't featured in any Marvel comics since that team-up, because it was reprinted at the end of his run in Super Spider-Man. Merlin believes that it was Arthur's voice that Brian heard calling to him, and he also thinks that those standing stones are Arthur's final burial place. His body, after he was killed in battle, was taken by the forces of darkness. Now, their new quest is to find that burial place and recover Arthur's body. We have a new main baddie now as well. His name is Necroman, and he wants to stop the heroes from recovering Arthur's body. First of all, our heroes have to get to Camelot, and the Black Knight on Valinor is sent ahead as a scout. This means that for the next several issues, we follow him as he battles a blind archer, a demon, and a massive dragon. Of course, he overcomes them all and manages to get to Camelot, where he meets Roma. Also, Captain Britain and the elves arrive, just in time to battle some generic baddies. In fact, during that battle, Captain Britain seems more like his old self than at any other point during this epic, although he still hasn't remembered that he can fly. Now, something pretty unexpected happens, because just as the multitudes that are referred to in here as the forces of evil lay siege to Camelot, and by the way, that's the title that is given to this whole epic when it's been reprinted, The Siege of Camelot, Captain Britain and the Black Knight leave. They set out to find the tomb of Arthur. Whilst Cap and the Knight are on their way to the tomb, they discover that they have a stowaway on board. He turns out to be the elf Jackdaw. Now, the elves in this tale have all been pretty interchangeable, but Jackdaw is different because he will go on to stay with Captain Britain for some time yet. After flying over more fantastic lands, they find the location of the Standing Stones. Cap then has his final battle of this epic, as it turns out that the Standing Stones are in fact rock giants. He and the Black Knight struggle to defeat them, but when the elf Jackdaw adds his own psychic abilities to the fray, the rock giants crack up, expose humans beneath, who then die and crumble into the earth. After they crumble into the earth, King Arthur rises from it, in a bit of a creepy scene. As his corpse rises, and then flesh and bone form, until the king once more is standing in his former glory. Then Cap's role in this whole epic comes to an end in issue 60 of the whole comic. King Arthur says that the foes of the powers of good are everywhere and in every time, and for that reason he sends Captain Britain along with Jackdaw the elf back to present day Britain. That's it. He's sent home in the first couple of panels of this instalment without even getting a line. The last few chapters of this story are taken up by Arthur, Merlin and the Black Knight fighting Necroman and the forces of evil. Arthur is so grateful for the Black Knight's role in all this that he offers him a place to stay in the new Camelot. But the Black Knight declines. He says the Black Knight's quest is never ended. He says there are other battles in other worlds, and the only world he seeks right now is the green earth and home. So the endless parade of battles has finally come to an end. And for such a long storyline, over a year in the telling, 60 plus issues, we only really found out the true nature of the quest in the last third of the story, and then things just seemed to whiz along, battle after battle, until that's it, it's all over.
Okay, as I've already said, I don't know why there are any superheroes in this story. Clearly it was intended as a fantasy epic, and there's nothing wrong with that. But go all in. Drop the 20th century superheroes, and instead have some protagonists that fit in with the genre of the story. Superpowers don't even come into play in the story. When Cap uses his staff, he uses it like Friar Tuck or Little John would. And his amnesia seems to have affected him to the degree that he has forgotten that he can fly. The story doesn't feature any character development. There are no pivotal scenes that linger in the memory. And the story overall, a story that took over a year to tell, begins at A and plods along to Z. The art is definitely the strongest point. Black and white art always looks impressive, but at times in this series, it is sublime. Would I recommend it? No. It is just too difficult to stay engaged for the duration of the tale. But it is another chapter in the history of our captain. At least on this occasion, the whole story was told without having to change to another title halfway through. Interestingly, issue 63 of Incredible Hulk Weekly, the issue that contained the last chapter of the Otherworld saga, was also the last issue in this series, as yet another Marvel UK title got the chop. It was in April 1980 that King Arthur sent Captain Britain back to his own time. It would be a year and a half before we saw him again. It has been 4 years since Cap's creation, and in that time he has been something of a disappointment. He has gone from a cut-price rip-off of Spider-Man to a personality-free character who appears to have walked into the wrong comic strip. He just wasn't someone that I, as a fellow Brit, would be proud of. If only he was a character that you could look at and say, whoa, he looks impressive. If only he was given a power upgrade, so he could go toe-to-toe with some real heavy hitters. If only his adventures had more depth to them, more personality, so you'd want to read them again and again. In September of 1981, all of those if-onlys would be put to bed.